Hi everybody, welcome back to another edition of Journeys with Jack. Today we're all in for Tallinn. So I had the pleasure of traveling to this lovely capital of Estonia a little while back, about a year ago in April, with my good friend Sam Oliver. We were in Riga, Latvia, and Sam had arranged for us to take a flight on Air Baltic for only $60 for one day up to Tallinn. So we got to the airport very early, about 7 a.m. We're on the plane by 8:30 or so, and in Tallinn within 35 minutes. By the way, the lounge is great in Riga and it's great in Tallinn. So the Air Baltic Lounge features fabulous vegetables, sausage, local fruits, local vegetables, and all kind of great cuisine, and some kind of purple cabbage dish. I don't know what it was, but it was delicious. Anyhow, we didn't take any luggage. They charge extra if you bring luggage, but you can come back with whatever you bought shopping, call that a personal item, and everything's cool. So we get up there to Tallinn, and we're in the airport. We get through quickly, and we got on the number 2 bus as we were directed by the information desk. I'm quite pleased to tell you that most people in Estonia speak some degree of English, which is good because I speak zero Estonian. So we took the number 2 bus over to one of the gates to the old city called Tallinn, Vallin. That basically just denotes the old medieval city. So we entered through the gate and walked around marveling at the great medieval fortifications. This place is like one gigantic castle. It has all kinds of super thick walls with ramparts, turrets, etc. It has one massive tower called the Fat Margaret Tower, which apparently was built to be such an impressive defensive tower that it could be seen by the sea far away if there was an invader coming. Well, we wandered around enjoying our time through the narrow streets, marveling at the architecture, and climbed up a steep hill to look at one of the 2 most remarkable churches that I recall from the trip. We saw lots of churches, but 2 of them really stand out. The first being Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, which had beautiful onion domes, everything you'd expect from a Russian Orthodox church, lavishly painted, beautiful inside and out. The inside was just as photographic as the outside. The onion domes particularly striking. And outside were a lot of people offering day tours, which we actually didn't opt for, as you really don't need it because each one of the museums has a great guidebook, and then you can walk around the town pretty easily with the map you can pick up at the information desk in the airport, and it'll guide you to different sites of interest. What I did actually obtain, which I thought was fascinating, one of the fellows offering a tour was also selling coins from the days of the Soviet occupation of Estonia. So the Russians had annexed Estonia in 1940, and the Soviet Union occupied it for the next 50 years. And this guy was selling these little coins from the 1970s, the 100th anniversary of Vladimir Lenin, and they issued a Russian single ruble coin. So I bought this for about €2. Great souvenir from the days of communism, which hopefully will be confined to the dust heap of history. Anyway, after going to the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, I thought it would be appropriate for me to comment on the other most remarkable standout church there in Tallinn, which was the St. Olaf's Cathedral, actually St. Olaf's Church, not cathedral status. St. Olaf's, what was most interesting about it was the massive steeple, quite out of proportion with the church. I marveled at it and then later learned when we'd visited another museum what was the reason for this really tall steeple. Apparently St. Olaf's Church was next to one of the KGB listening outposts, and they used this steeple to camouflage their super powerful, super tall radio antenna. Hey, that's what you did back in the Cold War. Anyway, after checking out St. Olaf's and a few other churches in parts of the old town, we went to some of the museums about the time that Estonia was occupied by the Soviet Union. The Baltic people are very sensitive about how their country was taken and overrun and annexed onto the Soviet Union, and then the next 50 years they spent under occupation. Consequently, they have a museum devoted to everyday life under the occupation, which also deals with how they attained their freedom in a mostly bloodless revolution in the early 1990s. There's also an interesting museum about the KGB. It shows their detention facilities. But the most interesting museum from that time for me was the Hotel Viru, which was the Soviet Union's headquarters for their secret police, the KGB, on the top floor. So we headed over to that, and let me talk about it now because it was one of the most fascinating things I saw. So the Hotel Viru, it was officially 21 stories high, or 21 floors, but everybody in town knew it was 22 floors because they could count. Okay, so on the 22nd floor, it was top secret. This was the KGB headquarters. Now, the KGB had the entire hotel infiltrated. There were 3 times as many employees at the hotel as there could be guests staying at the hotel, and most of these employees worked for the KGB somehow. They had spies on every floor. They had a hostess on each wing, and she was a spy. They had spies in the dining hall, the waiters, the laundromat, the concierge, the hotel front desk, etc. So what had happened was the Soviet Union needed what's called hard currency. The Russian ruble was not particularly valuable in the international trading market, so they wanted US dollars, British pound sterling, German marks, French francs, Swiss francs, Italian lira. This was all before the euro came about. So they built the Hotel Viru in the early 1970s to cash in on the tourist trade of people being interested in Tallin, Estonia, and the medieval architecture, etc. So Tallin dates way, way back in time, and it was part of the Hanseatic League. The Hanseatic League was a loosely arranged trading configuration with mutual defense pacts and included ports such as Tallinn, also Danzig and Hamburg, and then they had trading posts as far afield as London and Bruges, etc. So most of the Hanseatic traders were from Denmark and Scandinavia and Germany, and so they would resettle some of these people into the various cities that they had established. So Tallinn is a mixture of some people that are still ethnically German or Danish intermarried with the local Baltic population. So anyhow, that's how the place came about in the Middle Ages, and it's been a tourist attraction maybe past 200 years plus. So the Soviet Union sought to cash in on the tourist value of Old Tallinn and built the Hotel Viru and tricked it out with all kind of stuff like two-way mirrors, hidden mirrors, microphones, and they were all ingenious. So I would ask the viewer to check out the movie, the James Bond movie, From Russia with Love, which shows the same sort of thing in the hotel that James Bond's staying at the very beginning of the movie. There, he's going around picking out microphones from lamps behind pictures, etc. So the Soviets did this as well, and it was quite ingenious. Some of the things they show was in the museum was a pair of cufflinks that a waiter would wear, and these were microphones, and then hidden microphone and a cup and a saucer, and then different methods for which to spy on the guest, etc. The guide that showed us around the hotel and up to the old KGB headquarters was particularly knowledgeable, and he had grown up in Tallinn during the time of the Soviet occupation. He was pointing out all things that seemed to discredit the old communist regime, including their foibles and inconsistencies, etc. One of the things he showed us was a newspaper article that was an obituary for the previous Russian dictator Leonid Brezhnev, who died, I think, in the late 70s, and later on there was Mikhail Gorbachev. So Mikhail Gorbachev, when he passed, they used the exact same obituary. He explained that with a central planning economy and politic like the Russian Empire or Soviet Union, everything had to be approved in Moscow. So once one obituary was approved, the editor of the paper would just use it over and over again. Kind of crazy. They also had a great display of the old uniforms in addition to radio handsets, radio listening devices, and also how they had basically up-to-date communication, or I guess state-of-the-art back in the 1970s. It was interesting. It was kind of a good trip down memory lane, and the view from the Hotel Viru 22nd floor was fabulous over the old city. The view was so great and it was so cold that I'd spotted a market down below, which we went to almost immediately, and I bought this great hand-knit wool sweater. let me show it to you. I'm going to tell you the thing is warm. I loved it. It was so warm on that cold day in Tallin, especially when it started snowing in April, that I later wore this same sweater when we traveled over to the Faroe Islands, but that's another story for another time. So after going through the market below the Hotel Viru, we walked about 10 minutes more to the Old Town City Hall, and doing so we passed through yet another ancient gate of the old city, and by this gate near the Hotel Viru are a bunch of fruit and vegetable stands, also other souvenirs, etc. So we went to the Old Town Square, big open area, Old Tallin, again named for the old town, and went into the town hall, which had a massive map of the Hanseatic League and a great display explaining the importance of the trade that they were undertaking at that time. A major valuable substance in that area is amber. Amber can be made into all sorts of jewelry, necklaces, brooches, earrings, etc. Brought some earrings back for my wife and daughters. This is a major export from not only Estonia but also from nearby Latvia. So the amber dates back to prehistoric times, I guess dinosaur times, what have you. And so the amber would be washed up from the ocean onto the seashore, and people would go collect it there. Nowadays, you can still derive it from the seashore, but it is mined and excavated as well to get a better yield. So very valuable back in the day of medieval times because it was hard to come by. And so amber would wind up as far afield as over in China or down in modern-day Istanbul, etc., based on the trading routes from that time. So that was a great display about what was the importance of the trade and why were these outposts built in these faraway areas by the Germans and Danes. So after going through the Old Town Square and the museum, we had a very hearty meal at a restaurant that supposed itself to be authentic to the Middle Ages. Well, the one thing that I noticed that was authentic was that there was no cutlery other than a spoon. So naturally we decided to have some type of soup or broth, and they made such with some wild boar, and it was quite delicious, particularly on a freezing cold day. Well, after that experience, it was getting close to time to get back to the airport and head on, so we decided instead of using the bus on this occasion to use a Bolt. Bolt is transport in that area like Uber. Just imagine like Uber or Lyft in the United States, and you've got the idea. So let me wrap it up and tell you a couple of observations and why you also should go visit Tallinn, Estonia. Very easy. They're on the euro, which at the time I went was on par with the dollar, and we've had strengthening of the dollar recently, so hopefully that'll remain the case. It is also about 7 hours ahead of U.S. East Coast time, so that'll give you an idea what sort of acclimatization you need for the time. The other great thing is that most people there speak at least a smattering of English, so it's easy to get around. Also, as I pointed out, you really don't have to employ a guide to get around to the places of interest, as you can pick up the brochures at the airport, and also each one of the museums has its own very detailed guidebook, with the exception of the Hotel Viru, where the guide came with the museum admission, so to speak, and he took a group of us around. I thought that was a very reasonable bargain. It was only $14 to see that museum. We spent a few hours there, and I've got to say it was very fascinating. I grew up during the Cold War, and it was a fascinating walk back through history. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope to see you on our next journey. Have a great day.